about education, and so we were a Parents Involved in Education chapter. Before that, concerned citizens of Sonoma County, mainly because of the education issues. And I grew up in a wonderful, patriotic Republican home. My father was the mayor of our little town in Roberts, Idaho. My uncle was a state senator, and I just grew up loving America. On both sides of my family, they fought in the Revolutionary War. So I think I just got it in my DNA. Anyway, I'm proud to be an American, and I want to preserve it.
Yay. So before we go any further, this is our flag, and we would like to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Be my pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Veterans may render a hand salute. Where's our flag?
It's on my book.
The flag did not make it with us today.
Otherwise, it's customary to cover your heart.
Yes.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay.
What I love about this picture, it has the beautiful flag in the background, and then it has a very angry eagle that is very upset with what's going on in our country now and is trying to preserve it. All right, without further ado, I will tell you about my latest book called Whoa, Nellie, and I'll tell you in a few minutes why I entitled it that. It's called 5G Dangers and Deception of Powerful New Wireless Technology. Go to the next slide. So in my presentation, you're going to hear all of these points that I'm going to be talking about. My personal experience, how I became part of the California smart meter battle, and what I learned about EMF from that. My own husband's illness that we believe happened because a cell phone tower was right next to his office at Sonoma State University. He now has leukemia. What is EMF radiation? What effect it has on humans and really all forms of life? What is 5G and why we should be really concerned about it? What is the FCC telling us? FCC, the Federal Communication Commission. And have there ever been any tests done on 5G? Not really. Why I entitled my book what I did. What are warnings coming from doctors and scientists about 5G? What is the Internet of Things? This is what's really driving this behind the scenes. And how 5G will be connected to it. How does the UN 21 and UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals promote 5G? Which cities are being used for testing 5G and why are they happily going along with it? 5G smart meters in California, recent unbelievable horrific fires, which I experienced myself coming from Santa Rosa. 5G laser weapons, China seeking to be the leader of the world, and what can we do to prepare for some rough times ahead? Can everyone hear me all right? Would you mind bringing me my water?
Yes.
I don't even know if I have any water left. So this is my personal experience with our smart meter battle. My good friend, Deborah Taveras, I think most of you have probably heard of her, probably have seen her amazing YouTubes. Well, back in 2010, we discovered that they were starting to bring smart meters into Santa Rosa, and I had her come and speak for an Eagle Farm meeting. That's how I met her. Thank you so much. And she let us know about the whole battle that she and her husband were going through because they're land developers and their tenants back in Southern California had told them ever since these strange meters have been placed on our buildings, we are getting sick. We're having headaches and heart palpitations, and we're wondering who we're supposed to go to about this. Are we supposed to sue you as the landlord, or are we supposed to sue in Southern California Edison? And so Deborah and her husband became really concerned about this, and so they started investigating and wondering why people were getting sick with these new smart meters on. So we became part of a group to fight this she lives in Sebastopol, I live in Santa Rosa, and a large group of mainly environmental organizations were fighting smart meters. Eagle Forum of California was the only conservative organization, but we stood shoulder to shoulder, stopping the Wellington electric trucks from coming in to Sebastopol, to Santa Rosa, to deploy smart meters. They use a military term. Why? Because these are military weapons. They use the same with 5G antennas. They say deploy. Is that interesting? So anyway, that shows you what a normal smart meter looks like. It's a digital meter. The old analog meter has circles that go around. It's not wireless, it is wired. And that's why it doesn't have radiation, but the smart meter has radiation in it. So we began to speak out every month at the California Public Utility Commission, telling them why we were so opposed to this. It took us a 2-year battle. It also took us getting an attorney, filing a lawsuit, and PG&E finally backed down and allowed us an opt-out. And then because the California had an opt-out, other states were using our example so they could have an opt-out as well, because at first they were telling us, this is absolutely mandatory, there is no way you can opt out. So it took a long time, but we developed a wonderful friendship. These environmental groups told us, you're the first Republican we've ever met. And they actually liked us. And we discovered there were nice things about them, and we were able to fight these battles unitedly. This is a nonpartisan issue. Everyone should be concerned about our health. Next slide. So this is my husband, W. Kurt Kurla. His first name is Wolfgang, but in America no one can pronounce it right, so he just goes by Kurt, but he's originally from Germany. And he worked at Sonoma State University for 35 years. The last 6 years that he was there, he had developed leukemia. And he had no idea why. Nothing like that runs in the family. But he discovered just 3 years before that, they brought in a big, huge, high cell phone tower right next to his office. He's since discovered that other people who work there also have developed cancer. So there is such a thing as cancer clusters that are starting at schools, elementary schools, high schools, and colleges because of big cell phone towers that are brought in right next to the schools. The schools love this because they get like $2,000 every year for the cell phone tower to be there, and everyone is strapped for money. No one is ever told of the harmful effects that will happen. This is a handsome young man by the name of Rich Farver, who was a graduate student at San Diego State University. His mother, Virginia, started getting calls from him saying he just had splitting headaches. He was going to go on to law school. He couldn't study. He said all he wanted to do was sleep. And then it just got so painful. She told him, please call 911. She and her husband came to visit him, and he was diagnosed with a brain tumor and was gone 6 months later.
Wow.
And all over where he worked in this office, the same thing. There was a cell phone tower right next to it. About 10 people have since died also from this same cancer cluster. And she tried to get the university to bring down that cell phone tower, to no longer allow it to be there, but they just closed the office down. But it's still there, and within a radius of 1,000 feet, it affects people. And so how many students have developed cancer, not knowing why, or whatever illnesses they've developed? So what is EMF radiation, and what effect does it have on all living beings? This is electromagnetic frequency radiation emitted from all wireless devices, and the higher the hertz, the higher the radiation. EMF affects humans and all life because we're all electrical beings. Our hearts are operating because of this electrical current in us. Our brains the same way. That's why they can take an ECG, which is electrocardiogram, that tells you what your heart is doing. That's why your heart can be stimulated with a pacemaker that has a battery because it's electrical. And the brain is a superhighway of electrical signals, processing and delivering millions of messages to the entire human body every second. So we are affected by this wireless radiation coming in on us, just like every living being is, and even plants. And they're discovering where these big cell phone towers are, even plants are suffering, and of course animals. And I'll show you a little bit later in the presentation about that. So what is 5G and why is it so powerful and harmful, and why I called my book Whoa Nelly? This is called a different generation of wireless. It has a different encoding method, which makes it incompatible with the previous generation. I was in the Salt Lake City Capitol building 3 weeks ago testifying, actually because of this bill. They were trying to bring in an Article 5 convention resolution, and I testified against it and gave the members of the committee a copy of this little book. And when I was there, I met with other Eagle Forum people from Utah, and the lady that is working at the Capitol every day, who helps the interns that work for Eagle Forum there, she said they had to bring in all new computers this year because their computers just would not work. And she found out why. Salt Lake City has been chosen as a test city, along with New York City, and especially their university. So the University of Utah is their test university, selected by the National Science Foundation, and New York City and Salt Lake City and the universities get to share $100 million. So of course they're so honored and thrilled, this great honor they were given. This radiation goes from them down to 2 miles down into the city where the Capitol building is. It's also where all the church office buildings are for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So you can imagine how many people are being affected by this. And my friend Marianne Christensen said they had to bring in all new computers because their old laptop computers wouldn't work with the new 5G. Isn't that amazing? So it's already being in operation there. And then 5G promises 3 things. It's going to be faster speed to move more data. It's all about data collection. More responsiveness and connectivity to more devices through this vast Internet of Things. And so, of course, people love that idea. When I grew up on my farm in Idaho, my best friend had lots of horses, and she let me ride one that was called Maverick, and I just loved it. But when it was heading back for the barn, you could not whoa it for anything under the sun. You'd say whoa, and it would not whoa. And Whoa Maverick didn't seem like the right name for my book, so I called it Whoa Nelly, kind of more of a typical horse name. And it's like a runaway horse. It is so out there now, and it's going to be almost impossible to bring back, mainly because they did it so sneakily. The vast majority of Americans still have no idea what 5G is. They've just done it under the wire, and what they do know is, oh yay, it's wonderful and fast, and we're going to just have so much more connectivity and all the fun things we can do. And why is it more harmful? There are serious health risks because of the higher, stronger EMF radiation. We're going from 4G, which is 2.5 gigahertz. Most of our cell phones, that's what they are, will now be up in the 25 to 100 gigahertz. And this is an untested range, except for the few little tests that have been done, and they're all very negative and very dangerous. But what the United States has done, if they have done any testing, it's kind of been kept hush-hush. Okay, next slide. Warnings are coming from doctors and scientists about EMF radiation. The sad thing is all the little children that are being given cell phones to use, to play with, video games, it just breaks your heart to see these little children holding these up to their face, because they are getting brain tumors now. The highest disease for children now is cancer, either leukemia or brain tumors. So you can understand how this is happening. It's causing sleep disturbances, headaches, dizziness, depression, depressive symptoms, tiredness and fatigue, lack of concentration, changes in memory, infertility. That's because the men are carrying their cell phones in their pant pockets or their back pants. They're even getting breast cancer because they're carrying their cell phones in their left pocket. And even heart cancer. No one's even heard of heart cancer before, but that's where the heart is located. Thyroid cancer and leukemia, just like what my husband has. If you'll go back just to that last one, what is so sad is to this mother who has the cell phone allowing her little child to be holding the laptop on her lap. Women are finding out that they are infertile now because their eggs have been so affected from childhood on because of laptops on their lap. And they're being told, no problem, no harm, but there is harm. And it's just amazing. The infertility rate now in our nation has just skyrocketed. These are some more warnings by doctors and scientists about EMF radiation. Multiple studies have confirmed a link between EMF and cancer, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune disorders, and other chronic debilitating diseases. This is from Dr. Gabriel Cousins of naturalnews.com. Radio frequency radiation causes sleep problems, headaches, altered brain development, memory loss, depression, neurological symptoms, hormone changes, sperm damage, and cancer. That's from the American Academy of Pediatricians. A big rise in leukemia, especially among children, a rise in brain tumors and cancer clusters close to cell phone towers. This is a picture of the brain that after just 15 minutes of cell phone use. And as you can see, it's all lit up. What is that doing inside? So of particular concern are the most vulnerable among us, the unborn, the children, the infirm, the elderly, and the disabled. It is also expected that populations of bees and birds will drastically decline, and I'll show you a little picture of that, of this, what happened in Holland in just a moment. So this is what 5G looks like on the big bandwidth. This is 4G, and it's 2.5 to 6 gigahertz. The 24 gigahertz and goes all to the other end. That is the 5G. And of course, it's a large millimeter wave bandwidth, and it is the microwave. This what Liz spoke about and how dangerous that is. With 5G, you can download a 2-hour movie in just 3.6 seconds rather than 6 minutes. With 4G or 26 hours with 3G. So of course, the teenagers think this is just wonderful. They love the convenience, they love the fast speed, and it's very scary. This shows you the entire electromagnetic spectrum and what is over here. Computers are 60 to 100 hertz, and TV broadcasts 54 to 700 megahertz. Radio waves are kind of the same way, and then we get to the gigahertz. Microwave are 3 to 30 gigahertz, Wi-Fi 2.4 to 2.5 gigahertz, smart meters the same, and over here is now the huge gigahertz of 5G, and it's going to be really, really scary, and no one is telling us about it. So it will be like a large invisible microwave blanket covering our whole city. As you see, all the little points that are going to be connected every 500 feet will be a small cell antenna to make sure everyone is totally connected and getting fast cell phone, internet, and Wi-Fi service. Do we really want to be under a big microwave blanket? I don't think so, but that's what's going to be happening to us. This is what 5G small cell antennas look like. They're still putting them on big, huge towers. So this is called a 4G massive MIMO, multiple input, multiple output. On that same 4G, they're now putting 5G small cell antennas. Then you see them in Cleveland, Ohio. They look like square boxes, but I've seen them in California, Utah, Nevada, and Idaho. They all look like round buckets. So up here, this poor lady woke up one morning in Santa Rosa, discovered 5 of these round bucket-looking things on her telephone pole, 20 feet from where she was sleeping. And then they put this big, huge refrigerator-looking thing. And then over here, it's a streetlight antenna in Boston. It looks like almost like a dunce cap on top of the light pole. And in Santa Rosa, you see them all over. They're really big, and they're on top of the light poles. So the lady in Santa Rosa, her name is Judith, she called the Press Democrat newspaper and said, would you come and take a picture of this? This is so crazy. So they did. And then every day she would write graffiti on the big refrigerator looking thing. And finally, when she put skull and crossbones all over it, they removed it because it was giving them bad publicity. But you'll see those often. Big, huge refrigerator looking thing, plus all the small cell antennas. And the FCC passed a ruling, if you give them permission to put one up, they can put as many as they want to after that. Did you have a question?
Yeah, what happens if you put a couple of 22 rounds in that?
I don't know if anyone has tried. Maybe you'd have a big explosion. I have no idea. You could be the first to try.
I know. I have a friend who, when they put up these huge lamps adjacent his business in his backyard, he put a couple of 22 rounds in them, and they stopped putting them up.
That's a good thing to think about. I have 26 suggestions at the end of my book. I have not put that one in there, but maybe it's something we should consider. Okay, this is in Nevada City, California. This is what happens because they passed this Federal Spectrum Act, 6409A, which essentially allows an expansion of devices once you give permission. So how ugly that is. Here's the small cell antennas on the pole, and then a refrigerator looking thing, and then that big huge thing, and who knows whatever the other devices are, but that's all 5G. Isn't that amazing? This is what they're doing in the rural area. Look at those enormous, huge small cell antennas, and this is the truck that I've seen everywhere. And I saw it in Paradise when I went to go there. There were 8 trucks, all assembled outside Paradise, ready to go in and start deploying small cell antennas everywhere. And this is in, I don't know what rural area, but it's being put up by the National Rural Electric Cooperatives Association. It's a big lobbyist group trying to get 5G for all the farmers and ranchers throughout the nation.
Is this the equivalent of like Wi-Fi for everybody?
It will be bringing Wi-Fi into everyone's home, but they're going to call it Y-Gig.
Well,
it's a higher Wi-Fi.
It's kind of why not? We record everything.
Right. And it's all about data recording. It's going to make it so much faster. Okay, so what is expediting 5G in the nation? There are all of these things. First of all, I'm sorry to say, President Trump passed an executive order a year ago in January expediting 5G broadband coverage for the entire rural America. He said every farmer and rancher should be able to have 5G. So that was his executive order. Then the FCC passed a ruling last September 26 that limits local governments from having any jurisdiction over their deployment and placement of 5G antennas. They're trying to say that the cities should not really have anything to say, and it also was lowering the price that the cities could charge for a 5G antenna. In Santa Rosa, they were charging $300 per antenna. You know, they thought it was a reasonable fee, but this one lowers it like $50. Then there's this bill, a federal bill going through, SB 3157. Fortunately, it got stuck in the Commerce Committee. We were actually there, Liz and I, last September to lobby against it. I gave each of the members of the Commerce Committee a copy of my 5G book, and we had a 2-page handout telling them why we were so opposed to this. Maybe other people were doing it as well. I know they were getting lots of calls from city governments all over the nation because they would have been mandating it. This bill would have mandated it so no city could say no, no state could say no. Fortunately, it did not pass. But then we have state legislation that has passed. 23 states have passed their own legislation mandating it for every city. California passed such last year, and fortunately, Jerry Brown vetoed it. The one good thing he did, because he said we should allow cities to have jurisdiction over their own cities, which makes sense. And then, guess what? Last December, the Farm Bill was passed. So the Farm Bill, it was like a big omnibus bill. It had everything in there. I think $5.8 billion, $580 billion. Just amazing if they would have used that money to build the wall, but
Yes.
instead, so they had a little thing snuck in there that would expand 5G for all the farmers. And a little town that has less than 10,000 population, they get to have grant money to bring in 5G for the small little town. So it's
So
just
they use
amazing.
it because their crop, all the crops, all their equipment now runs on satellite controlled GPS,
GPS,
right?
yeah.
Isn't this amazing?
It's
Wow.
a way to drive
And
more
laser
people out of town.
technologies
No more
and
driving
things.
machines anymore.
Farmers don't need workers anymore.
No, it's going to be more and more robots picking the strawberries, whatever. And then we have competition among cell phones to put up 5G satellites. So by this year and next year, 20,000 5G satellites will be circling the globe, sending down powerful 5G radiation. And so you think, oh, I can escape to the rural area to get out of this. It doesn't look like there's going to be much escaping. Elon Musk was the one who first received the permission for his SpaceX, and he's putting up 12,000, and then these other companies are putting up other satellites. And then the last thing is Red China wants to be number one in 5G weapons, so of course the United States has to compete with Red China and the other countries as well. So it's kind of a bleak picture, isn't it? This shows you the 5G satellites. They're going to be up there, and this Elon Musk first received permission to put up 4,000, and then later it's now going to be 12,000. The other companies are Boeing, Spire Global, OneWeb, and the effect on humans. I thought this was amazing, what this article said. So if you're in a crowded airport or a train station where lots of people will be using their cell phones, the last time I was in an airport was coming back from St. Louis, Missouri, where I had to speak on this subject, and I just noticed everyone in the airport had their cell phone. Little children were playing games. And if 5G satellites are sending down radiation to all those cell phones to go through the building, it also, if it's able to go through walls, it's able to go through human bodies. So lots of people will be using their cell phones, laptops, iPads, and other devices. There will be hundreds, if not thousands, of invisible rays of radiation flying through the atmosphere, but also through your bodies at the speed of light, coming into your cell phone. Isn't that amazing? How scary that is. And if you think that this is not planned, this is, such an amazing way for some people to wipe out the populations that they would love to wipe out. As you mentioned, they have something I write about in here and show the picture of the Georgia Guidestones, where they actually say that they would like the population of the world to be 500 million people. So 500 million, and that's all. Wouldn't this be a convenient way to make that all happen? Next one. So 5cc guidelines are inadequate. It is a captured and corrupted agency. The current EMF safety guidelines are inadequate because they do not take into consideration non-thermal effects. This is what Dr. Martin Paul, Professor Emeritus of Biochemistry at the University of Washington, said. They're based on FCC 1996 studies of the thermal effect from a cell phone on a 200-pound man No testing of women or children, and it was only the thermal effect, nothing about a non-thermal effect. This is Tom Wheeler. He was the former head of FCC under Obama, and he was a lobbyist for 14 years for the cell phone industries before he became the head of the FCC. Do you think he had a little bias? And he set the policy to go full steam ahead, adopting 5G with no testing. Then this is now the present head of the FCC, appointed by Trump. His name is Ajit Pai. He was a former attorney for Verizon. He believes 5G can better protect America's cyberspace, boost national security, infrastructure, create billions in investments, 3 million jobs, and boost GDP by $500 billion. So he's going full steam ahead with it. The effect of these 5G millimeter waves. Oncologist Leonard Hardell stated there is a substantial body of evidence that this technology is harmful to humans and the environment. The 5G millimeter wave is known to heat the eyes, skin, and testes. Of particular concern are the most vulnerable, the unborn, the children, the infirm, the elderly, the disabled, and the bees and birds. And this shows you what this is. If any of you want to board an airplane, they try to put you through this scanner, the millimeter wave technology. It's an advanced imaging technology, but it's like going through a microwave using millimeter waves, and I always refuse it. I've never gone through it once, and I do a lot of flying.
So you do a skin search?
They pat me down, and the last time I went, actually quite a few of the last times I've went, because I'm so vocal about it, they just have me go through the regular little machine. And if they are going to pat me down, I very loudly say, I don't trust that machine. It's like a microwave. If it were not harmful, why is it that none of the pilots have to go through it, none of the flight attendants have to go through it, none of the small children under the age of 12 have to go through it? And
where are they testing it on us?
It's probably building up cancer in us. You know, more and more that you go through it, it's all of this, it kind of builds up in your system. Of course, they say they can detect if you have any metal on you, but they can also pat you down. But there's just, anyway, so I'm very concerned about that, and that is what 5G is. It's this millimeter wave technology. This is the effect of 5G testing that happened in Holland. Some of you have mentioned you had heard about this. So the Dutch government didn't want anyone to know about this, so as soon as these dead birds fell down, they were quickly gathered up and hidden. So this shows you all these birds that were in a plastic sack. These were starling birds. A test October 8th, 2018 of this 5G mast, that's their name for towers in Europe, on the top of the train station in The Hague, was conducted to see if the equipment was working without any harm. Well, I guess they didn't consider the harm that would happen to little birds. Immediately when they tested this in the Huygens Park across the street, it's supposed to be street, 150 starling birds fell out of the trees dead. The test continued off and on for several days. Each time more birds died. In total, around 400 birds were dead.
Wow.
And then ducks swimming in the pond tried to duck their heads in the water. Some of them tried to fly away, but their navigation ability was impaired and they fell on the street. So you can see how deadly this was. And yet they continued the testing.
Wow.
And then the year before in Groningen, which is way up in northern Holland, I was there for 8 months. I speak Dutch. And there was an article that had been somewhat translated, but because I speak Dutch, I was able to find out even more of the particulars in it. So this was, they decided to choose this area way up in northern Holland because it was mainly a farming area. And they conducted this test January 2017, that was 2 years ago. They tested the 5G. They were pretending to start this new program called Smart Potato. I grew up on an Idaho potato farm. I have never met a smart potato yet. And if there were, it would be on my father's farm, not in Holland. But they were trying to help the potato crop be better and doing all this testing to give better yields, and robots, just like what we've been talking about. 3 times each month the 5G was turned on. Each time the cows of 5 different dairy farms close to the town of Stittsford went wild with deadly fear. They were banging against the walls, hitting each other, and if they were able to get out of the barn, they just would go streaming out in the open and kind of turn their heads upward like, what is hitting me? And the farmers had no idea. They couldn't understand it. They brought in a veterinarian, and he said there's nothing the matter with their feed. They're, perfectly fine. But the fact it was 5 different farms, all at the exact same time. And then finally, someone at that area, they every now and then have little earthquakes, just little minor ones. And so they thought that maybe the cows were sensing that, but they'd been having those little earthquakes for the longest time. It had never affected them before. So finally, someone told the farmers about the 5G testing. And they figured, yes, that's exactly what's going on. But could they stop it? No. The cell phone industry is just as powerful there as it is here. But what's interesting, go back a moment. The cows were sweating profusely. This 5G millimeter wave does that to the skin. It affects the sweat glands, the eyes, and the testes. And the farmers, they all mentioned how they thought it was because they were just so afraid and anxious, and it was causing their sweat ducts to bring lots of water. But it's part of the millimeter wave, the effect it has. And then this is so interesting. Have any of you ever heard of the active denial system? This is a focused millimeter wave of EMF radiation that causes a burning sensation of 95 gigahertz. And as you see, it's like a laser beam. And if they are trying to stop a crowd from coming forward, they will use this. And of course, the people have to immediately go back because it's like a burn that comes on them. Well, what if they up the ante on it? Could it not only just give them this tiny little burning feeling, but just fry the people? Is that what happens when they use such things to create fires? Who knows? So that is called the pain without injury, the active denial system. And remember that because it'll be mentioned a little later. Okay, next slide. What is the vast Internet of Things to which 5G will be connected? All of these interesting things, but every one of them has something to do with data. It's amazing. So the first is the device connection, the data sensing. They focus on access networks, cloud, edge, data transport. That's the communication. Over here is data analysis, big data analysis, AI, artificial intelligence, and cognitive analysis, data value, human value. Isn't that nice? They put a little value on humans. The IoT is a giant network of connected things, which also includes people. The relationship will be between people, and things. How many things? International Data Corporation says 212 billion units. Others are saying trillions of things will all be connected. So it will be so much